Hello and welcome to ATARC's webinar series. Today, topic experts will share strategies that help agencies alleviate the concern of the unknown and make operations more efficient. My name is Kirsten Patton, leadership consultant here at ATARC, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel discussion. ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and we are a nonprofit organization that provides facilitation and collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. We provide ongoing opportunities for cross-agency collaboration through on-site interaction, learning, and market research. I would like to welcome all of our attendees at home, and a special thanks to Patricia Chen and the entire Rubric team. This afternoon, we are going to hear from our panelists, followed by a Q&A session where we will pop in a few poll questions and answer your questions as we go through. So with that said, before we begin, I really want to encourage our audience to please submit those questions of your own in the Q&A section down below on this platform and answer the poll questions to ensure that you receive your CPE credits. On that note, I want to begin by a round of introductions from our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and invite our panelists to please come on camera and come off mute because I'm going to have you all introduce yourself. Let's begin with Senior Master Sergeant William Rouse. Will you please go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, everybody. Senior Master Sergeant Will Rouse. Work for Space Force Office of Chief Technology Innovation Office, and leading up efforts like Zero Trust and a little bit of workforce development.
Thank you so much. And next, let's hear from Donald.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Donald Coulter. I'm the Senior Science Advisor for Cybersecurity here at the Department of Homeland Security in the Science and Technology Director.
Great, excellent. Nice to have you here. Let's jump over to Damien next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Damian Taylor here. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the United States Postal Service Office of Inspector General.
Fantastic. And then, of course, Aaron. Let's hear from Aaron.
Hi, Kirsten. Good afternoon. Yes, my name is Aaron Lewis. I'm the Vice President for U.S. Public Sector Sales Engineering here at Rubric.
Fantastic. We've got a great lineup here. So again, audience interaction is highly encouraged. Please send in any questions you have as it relates to the subject that we're discussing. So the first question that I want to send out for is, let's hear from Damien first. Damien, maybe you can help us out here. What are some of the things that can be done to retain the necessary talent to build a cyber workforce? Could you please speak to that subject, and then we'll go around and hear from all of our panelists?
Yeah, so I'll start that by saying that all of us on the panel today come from the government space. I'm sure we share this challenge. So, we have limitations to what we can do from a competition perspective to compensate folks, right? There's a pay scale, that sort of stuff. One thing I will say that what can be done is you can recognize excellence, right? So if you have folks that are doing an excellent job, you can reward them in other ways, right? There are, pay things that you can do, whether it's a promotion or a bonus. Even in the government space, you can pull those things off. However, I think that when a person on a team, a cybersecurity team, is recognized for their accomplishments, more than just sort of pats on the back, but elevating that to leadership to make sure that leadership above the immediate team knows the contribution that the team player is contributing to the objectives that you're working on. And then to add that, if you want to keep good talent and continue to grow those folks, one of the things you can also look at doing is trying to make your training a little bit more robust, right? And so with that, let's say you get somebody some advanced training, there are tools out there working with HR where, one of the fears is we get folks trained up and very proficient in their particular process or their particular contribution, but then they go and leave, right, for the private sector. And so one of the things too, for at least for the government side, the federal space is it's with that you can tie some training or bonuses to time commitments in that particular role. And I'll pause there.
I love that you said all that. Great points. Let's see what the rest of the panelists have to share on this subject. Donald, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. You highlighted a lot of significant issues and shared issues that we have in terms of challenges of recruiting and retaining talent. One of the things that we've done here in our science and technology group here is open up broad opportunities for rotations amongst all of the components across DHS. So we actually have opportunity for people from different places, from FEMA, from ICE, from Customs Border Patrol, from other CIO offices as well, and they can come in and work with us for 6 months to a year, so that they can learn some more technical skills and get their hands dirty in some different areas and experience. And while it also brings us some different kind of intelligence and perspectives to our group and grows how well-rounded we are in our execution of our mission, it also proliferates people back out into the community that have more skills and knowledge and awareness and are savvier users and advocates in their own space. So I know it's a challenge because we kind of have a finite set of people sometimes, it seems like, and so if you're taking from one group, you're not really growing the talent. But to the extent that in addition to our recruitment of new people, we still want to grow the talent that we have in the organization as well. So that's one of the areas how we're using our opportunities within our group to give people more skills and more awareness of the challenges and more skills to help their organizations deal with those when they go back to their home organizations.
Yeah, that's perfect. There's a lot of creativity behind that, and it's better to be able to keep those people, even if it's not in this position that maybe they're no longer interested in. So I love that you guys have that on rotation. And let's hear from William next. Would you like to share your thoughts on this subject?
Yes, it is very important. Recruiting and retention and all that stuff is super important. There are things we can do by rotating jobs and stuff like that. I think the leadership's goal in retention you can't put words to it, right? My job as a cyber leader is to help people flourish, right? I'm going to give them every opportunity. Some people will leave military service, some people will stay around. But what I can do is I can influence their experience while they're here. I can make it worthwhile. We can show them the unique skill sets that can be learned through military cyber experience. And if all I do is free up their time to develop themselves, I think I've won the game at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of, if you can't beat with the compensation, then you can at least improve upon the culture and the experience and doing it for the right reasons to be able to keep the right people. So on that note, Aaron, I know you're coming at it from a little bit of a different angle, but I would love to hear your perspective on this topic as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously, as you mentioned, I am coming from the other side of it. And we talk about, the kind of challenges of public sector. And I see this a lot with my customers I talk to, is the compensation issue. And unfortunately, I tend to be the person on the other side of going after and trying to get some of the most talented folks, preferably not from my customers, right? But one of the things that I think that can really help with retention and just engagement for employees in the public sector is giving them the abilities to go out and learn new technologies. I heard that from a couple of the folks on the panel, right? And if I think of it from a software perspective, if you're looking at products that are new, that are more on the, maybe not on the bleeding edge, but on the cutting edge, then those folks have the ability to continue to increase their skills. And as employees tend to increase their skills, they tends to increase not only their satisfaction, but also their engagement with the job.
Absolutely. You all touched on some really key points. Damien, I love that you brought up the fact of recognizing excellence too, and not just saying, hey, good job, great work, keep it up, but being very specific about that sense of praise and acknowledgement. So appreciate everybody here's perspective on that. Is there anything else that our panelists would like to add? Or if you're in the audience, please, by all means, send in your comments too. I'd love to hear from you all.
Yeah, so I would like to add that one of the things that we're doing over at USPS OIG is we're trying to do a bit of outreach from a recruitment perspective to some university folks, right? So we have a co-op program in place where students that are attending a university are able to work part-time for us in various capacities. And we've had a couple of co-op students who ultimately resulted in full-time GS employees after their co-ops were done. But yeah, you get some good minds from some of these universities out here, and some of these students are struggling to gain employment simply because they don't have a bunch of experience. They may have some certifications in the academic piece or checking the box, but they don't have the experience that some places are looking for. So I would encourage folks, whether it's you on the call or a son or daughter that may be looking to break into the career field, is to look into co-op and internship programs that are out there.
That's absolutely a good point. One of the fun things that we have here is, since we're a research organization, we're also able to kind of partnership with universities and enable research projects for summer students, for also larger projects for grad students as well. And that's another very viable kind of path to expand the talent pool, get smart folks working on our problems, and then bring them in if there's opportunities to bring them in once they graduate and got those degrees, to bring them into the organization. It's a good point.
Definitely, you got to think creatively in order to obtain that creative talent and those people out there looking for those opportunities. Aaron, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add one other point. This was something that personally happened for me, and I think is important for the folks on the call, is emphasizing the importance of the mission. I think for the mission, and then sort of the unique nature. I think, if I look at, say, some of the things that William and his team are getting to do at Space Force, right? Or some of the things that you might be getting to do in terms of Homeland Security or with the Postal Service, the importance of that mission, I think, is super important. And the reason it kind of hit home for me is that I had a member of my team last year that left to go and work for the State Department Foreign Service because, and as we mentioned earlier, that was ultimately a bit of a pay cut, but to him, the importance of the mission was really important. And that was what drew him to the role. And I think that's something that my fellow panelists here, can really lean into in terms of keeping folks engaged.
Absolutely. I was looking for my clapping hands emoji reaction. I couldn't find it, but it's very true. Like, we think so much about the compensation aspect, but so many people care about, they have other whys for what it is that they're looking, especially if they're trying to think long-term with their career. So reminding people about these opportunities is a surefire way to get more engagement, more involvement. Any other comments from the panelists? Okay, then I will turn it over to our audience question. We had a couple of questions, comments coming through. Let's see here. We had a comment from Yvette. Oh, they're moving around. Let me see. Can I see them? Hi, thank you for sharing the job information. I'm a mid-career professional and wanted to check if you would be covering new cyber threats in today's session. Yes, we will be getting to those momentarily. All right, any other questions here? What are the federal IT leaders' strategies to train and reskill current IT staff on soft skills, such as conflict resolution or customer service, in addition to the latest cutting-edge IT hard skills? Well, this is one of my favorite topics. So panelists, would love to hear your insight on what it is that we're doing to help with the soft skills aspect, which is arguably just as important, if not maybe even more so, than the knowledge component. Go ahead, Damien.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that can be done is there are a number of programs out there available to teach you some of these soft skills. But even before you get to that, I think one of the things that folks need to consider is you need to get a mentor, right? And so a mentor should ideally be somebody above the level that you're working at, and having recurring meetings, whether it's monthly, quarterly, biannually, what have you, And some of these things can be conveyed through those meetings as a mentor, but also there are a number of programs out there. One of the avenues that we use in USPS OIG is American University. They have courses specific to conflict resolution, specific to leadership, specific to some of these soft skills. And then finally, one of the things that I encourage some of the younger folks to do is a lot of IT folks are not necessarily good at translation or public speaking per se, right? And so programs like Toastmasters often helps with getting over those fears or getting that practice. And then volunteer for stuff in your work, whether it's jumping on a working group or some other volunteer activity where you'll be able to get some exposure to work through some of these challenges.
Absolutely. Great points. Yes, please go ahead, William.
Yeah, through our professional military education, we address lots of those things, but we get a little bit of public speaking, a little bit of volunteer work, a little bit. I think it really takes some focused effort from I guess the employee and from the supervisor to say, hey, I want to develop you like this. Like, these situations are probably going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be all right. These are going to get you better. And that does two things. It helps the person explore new avenues, but it also shows that, hey, the supervisor really cares about me and they are trying to do things that are in my best interest. And I think that's a critical step.
Definitely. And that goes right back to being able to retain good talent in the workforce too. Who wanted to speak next? Aaron, did you have your hand raised?
I did not. I figured that seemed like it was addressed directly at the federal leaders on the call.
Sure. Donald, how about you? Any further input? Oh, is he frozen? Or am I frozen?
It looks like Donald is frozen now.
Okay, you guys had me worried for a second. I was like, what do we do if the moderator gets frozen? I think I have a good Wi-Fi connection though. So we'll hear from Donald in a minute. Any further thoughts before I move on to the next audience question? Great question, by the way, HA, whoever you are. Thank you for sending that in. Okay, next question from Som Chim. For lack of skills and talents, what's the impact on the mission? Also, what is your strategy as far as partnering with external partners and experts in the field to help fill the gaps? Who from our panel would like to take that one? What is the impact on the mission if there is a lack of skill or talent? How do we resolve that?
I can jump in there. So I think one of the ways a couple of ways that you address that, right? It's obviously we talked about training, so that'll help. But more immediately, one of the things that a lot of folks should be able to take advantage of is, let's say your technology stack or your security stack is heavily focused on one of the cloud providers, right? Whether it's Amazon, Google, Microsoft. It's often helpful to get a retainer or a bucket of hours from a subject matter expert from the company, right? It doesn't have to be a full-time effort, but one of the things we do is we have that SME jump on to regular calls weekly as we're working on initiatives or changes in the environment. And they chime in with, hey, here's how you do it. Here's things you need to look out for. They provide sort of playbooks and targeted sort of learning opportunities for the analysts and engineers working on the effort.
Great. Thank you, Damian. Anyone else on our panel want to contribute to that one? Okay, well, then we've got Bob Mariner written in. Hey, Bob. How are you approaching your transition to post-quantum cryptography and protecting against the Y2Q future threats to the zero trust data pillar? I know we had some folks mention zero trust on here earlier, or maybe it was today. Would anyone from our panel like to address the zero trust post-quantum cryptography?
I'll jump in again. It looks like Donald's trying to rejoin, but so I would say to the audience that the quantum cryptography risk that's being publicized currently is still a bit out there. Meaning, it's the NIST is already working on quantum resistant cryptography. So I would imagine within the next year or two, that draft that they're working on, the guidance they're working on will be published, and then vendors and agencies will then use that to kind of strengthen this future risk. But in today's environment, there aren't really any feasible quantum decryption methods out there. In fact, there's very few organizations with a workable quantum computer, let alone one that can break current strong encryption. So that's kind of where we are now. But believe me, there are working groups out there that are addressing this problem, as it will be a future threat in the next 5 years or so.
Definitely. Even ATARC has a quantum working group. So if you are interested in learning more about that, just reach out from someone from the ATARC team. Yes, William, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to add, please don't take the previous speaker's answer as people aren't taking it seriously. There's a very large group of very, very intelligent people taking this problem seriously, and it's being worked. I would just say be ready for lots of changes in the near term.
Thank you. Anybody else from the panel want to chime in? Otherwise, we will go ahead and call for question number 1.
Yeah, Kirsten, I'll chime in from the vendor side of things. It's definitely something that we're examining, but much to Damien's comment and then also William's comment, it's something that we'll take seriously, but we're waiting for guidance from a lot of these working groups, from NIST, and it's something that from a commercial perspective is definitely not something that's going to be implemented in the near future in most commercial products, I would expect.
Thank you, Aaron. Anyone else? All right, let's go ahead and get poll question number 1 up here then. Hopefully we can get Donald to rejoin us shortly. But poll question number 1 for our audience, and again, respond to this if you'd like to receive your CPE credit. Where is data security in your prioritization? So please take a moment to respond to poll question number 1. And then for our panelists, I'm going to go ahead and pose our second question, which is, William, maybe you can kick us off with our question number 2. What systems or policies has your agency implemented to meet your goals in this sector?
As far as zero trust, or as far as employee retention?
Zero trust.
Yeah. So we're working with quite a few cloud vendors to have a cloud agnostic system, to whereas the service of Space Force and the larger DoD group can have a set of pillars and best practices, and then let the services make the appropriate decision at the appropriate level as to what tools to use to accomplish their mission use case.
Thank you. And for the rest of the panelists, this could apply to any type of cyber threat or recovery. So talk to me about the kind of policies or systems that your agency has implemented in order to meet your specific goals at your agency. Donald, if you heard me, I see you were logged in as me for a second there. Donald, did you hear my question? Would you like to go ahead and kick us off with the answer?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, we're just talking about systems and or policies that your agency has implemented as it relates to the subject around cyber threats and recoveries and data security. Talk to me about what that might look like at your agency in order to reach your specific goals.
All right, so interesting, right? So I am, again, I'm not actually in a CIO or CISO shop, so kind of different role in terms of dealing with and addressing current and active threats on a day-to-day basis. But some of the areas that we're looking into to protect data on a long-term basis from a research perspective is looking into more advanced opportunities in encryption and secure computing in terms of leveraging advances in homomorphic encryption and secure multi-party compute. And this is especially interesting to us in terms of enabling some like advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms and trying to enable federated learning across multiple organizations and parties. So these are kind of just some of the areas we're looking into, in addition to some efforts into secure multi-cloud capabilities and being able to give us more flexibility to store data and use services across different cloud service providers without having to always pull the data back and keeping it encrypted while we process it and just pulling back the information that we need to make decisions for the future.
Thank you, Donald. And then Damien or Aaron, whoever comes off mute first. Damien, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're heavily focused on is under the tenet of zero trust, right? So we're very heavily focused on privileged identification management, or what we call PIM, and then conditional access management. And both of those are kind of sub-subjects underneath zero trust. But one of the things that we're doing is, so 90% of our infrastructure resides under a cloud service provider's tenant. It works for us. It may not work for some folks. I would imagine some of the stuff that William is into, that probably won't work for some of the stuff that he's involved in. However, there are a lot of policies and controls that these cloud providers offer that you can test and then ultimately take advantage of. So like gone for us are the days of, hey, we have this global admin who can do global admin stuff anytime they want. Now they have to elevate their role to that administrative role, but it also takes a second person's approval for that elevation to take place. And that does two things. It lets us know when a person needed to be elevated to do administrative functions, what they did, why they were elevated, and how long they were elevated. Because one of the common methods for adversaries is once they get into your network, they grab administrative credentials. Their goal is to be a domain or global admin. And if you have those roles out there that don't require you to get elevated first, then they can pretty much function and have lay of the land as they see fit. However, if you limit that, then you kind of limit the damage, right? In theory. So that's kind of, so again, privileged identification management, PIM, and conditional access management. Who's doing it, why they're doing it, how long do they need it? And it's kind of a model of just in time and just enough access.
Thank you, Damien, for sharing your thoughts on that. And then anyone else from our panel like to chime in? Aaron?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think Damien makes a great point, right? Access management and especially elevated access management tends to be a very common attack vector. We at Rubrik, we see, about 1 to 2 ransomware attacks from our customers, both on the commercial and on the public sector side a week, right? So it's the problem out there, and so many of those tend to be someone gets inside, they get access to some kind of elevated privilege through some type of weakness, and they move around the environment. So some of the things that we're looking to do here, especially around the zero trust initiative from both just the federal government as a whole, and then also the specific DoD zero trust guidance that's being worked, is the ability to really almost expect that that's going to happen at some point, that some type of elevated penetration is going to happen. And so then building in things like immutability by design, encrypting all the data at rest and transit, making sure that we have some type of observability around that data itself, and then making sure that we do everything we can so we also don't invalidate any kind of zero trust work that the agencies are doing by doing things like least privilege access and, two-factor authentication, making sure that all of those things are built in at the core of the system. And in addition, when we go back to some of the workforce conversations, making sure that a lot of those are just on by design, right? They don't require configuration. It's not complication by configuration where, an administrator might not have the knowledge and might misconfigure something and thus leave something open. So those are some of the things that we're focusing on to try to help the agencies achieve that zero trust mission.
Thank you, Aaron. And William, I saw you wrote in the chat. Do you want to share some of your thoughts around that as well?
Yes, it's just trying to highlight the, it's fine. It's not ideal, but if someone gets access to your environment, you need to find ways to make that access not be as bad. So we're talking lateral movement improves escalations, goes back to SolarWinds and the golden ticket attacks and those types of things. So we need to really stress the development of those TTPs. And that again goes back to NIST and their foundation zero trust efforts. Lateral movements, number one, needs to stop.
Thank you. The MITRE attack framework, Damien, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'm just a big fan of it. I'm trying to stay vendor agnostic. However, MITRE's kind of in that gray space, but I will say that there are a lot of smart people that have developed this framework over the years. And while it may not be 100%, it's pretty close to most things I've seen out there. So it covers the different vectors of how attackers gain entry, establish a foothold, and like William was suggesting, the lateral movement. It offers a bunch of different arrays of ways adversaries either steal data or cause havoc on networks. So it should be something that folks reference regularly, in my opinion, especially from a defensive perspective. It's a very important critical piece, I think, in your knowledge of, but also kind of to have at the forefront of your mind when you're thinking strategies and protection mechanisms that you're looking to implement or evolve.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Nilanjani wrote in, I think that might answer part of her question too. Any other thoughts from our panelists on this before we move along?
Yeah, I would build on to that. Just in addition to the attack framework's great, another framework they developed, the Atlas framework, kind of builds on that, focusing on AI risks and mitigations as well. So another kind of plug for that FFRDC in terms of understanding some of the risks and especially from a data perspective and data poisoning and attack and integrity concern issues that are fueling a lot of these artificially intelligent or machine learning based network capabilities. It's another area for folks to keep in mind as well. That can help you think about how to secure your data and operations as well.
Thank you, Donald. I'm glad we got you back on this webinar here. Aaron, and I also want to make sure you have an opportunity to speak. Any further thoughts from you?
Yeah, I just think it's, what happens now is as we start to move into, a world where the threat's continually evolving. And what it really does, it starts to, administrators, CISOs, CIOs, folks on this panel, folks on the call, they start to have to ask themselves, many new questions, right? Is in terms of, where the access is, what data was accessed, how do they know how to recover? Can they recover? I think those are some really important things that start to become a big part of any initiative that folks are trying to implement today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your insights there. Let's go ahead and pop up poll question number 2, please, for our events team. We'll get that up on the screen here momentarily. And then I will ask my next question for our panelists. But poll question number 2 asks, how frequently do you advocate for continued education against evolving threats? So please take a moment to respond there. Let's see here. My next question, I don't think, Aaron, you've started with a question yet, so I'm going to turn it over to you first. What systems or policies have, I know you're not with an agency, the question is for the agency, but just talk about implementing systems and policies what issues have you experienced with data security, and what were the steps that were taken to ensure that critical information stays secure from cyber attacks? So from your industry perspective, what are some of the things that you could advise for our government friends online?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take that from the perspective of not only seeing and speaking to many federal customers, but also many state and local customers, as well as, being able to see the interactions that we have with our commercial customers as well. I think it goes back again to really expanding the scope of what cybersecurity means. In the past, and even today, like traditionally, it tends to be a heavy focus on things like Damien talked about, right? Identity management is absolutely key. Network access is absolutely key, but that can't be the end of the story, because what we're seeing today, bad actors they're not just penetrating the network and encrypting the data, and especially in the federal government space where the federal government does not pay the ransom. And in addition, many of my state and local customers are being banned by state law to pay the ransom. So what these bad actors are doing is that they're looking to exfiltrate the data, hold maybe the customers, so your constituents hostage by saying, hey, we've got personally identifiable data about whether it's your children in school or it's your personal ID at the water department. And they're leveraging that for their financial gain instead. And so I go back again to a lot of the questions that start to arise is which data has been accessed, what sensitive data has been accessed, what do I need to recover, right? And how do I know that recovered data is clean? And so really expanding the scope of cybersecurity is the focus of many of the organizations that I work with, because they've done a lot of really good work on the identity management and the access management piece, or the network access piece. And now looking at not only, is my production data safe from access, but when it does get compromised, what will I do in the event of that attack?
Thank you, Aaron. I'd love to hear from our government panelists next, if anyone would like to jump in.
Yeah, I think it's cybersecurity 2.0, or whatever you want to name it, right, is a mindset thing. We have tons of smart people who are going to work out the hardest problems imaginable. But if you don't have the right mindset, you're going to go nowhere. So if from a very fundamental level, if you can start out with assuming breach, I think you're starting to move in the right place. So there's a growing number of tools that are becoming available every day. And depending on where you are and where your budget is, you can use different tools. But it doesn't take away from the fundamental aspects that need to happen for solid cybersecurity. And that's not RMF, that's not whatever you want to name it. It's a mindset to kind of push this rock forward.
Thank you. Yes, that mindset is so important. Aaron, go ahead.
I really like Will's statement, which is assume breach, right? I think to me, sometimes in my business, we start to talk about a lot of the stories and we come in with, and it seems like maybe it's a scare tactic, but in my mind, a lot of it is education, because I want many of my customers who think, well, one, we're a federal agency, we don't pay the ransom, so ransomware doesn't apply to us. Or many of my state customers say, oh, no, we're good, we've never been attacked. And I think having that mindset in cybersecurity of assuming a breach, I think is absolutely key to success.
Absolutely. Donald or Damien, would you like to add anything to this topic?
Yeah, I would just say that, to echo William and Aaron, the mentality is always assume breach. In that way, you're more prepared. It's at the front of mind. And you're moving in such a way that even if you are breached, some of those critical data assets or what we call keys to the kingdom, they're protected even in a breach scenario. So I would, strongly tell everybody, do not. The other thing it does is it doesn't allow you to rest on your laurels, right? Meaning, just because you passed a third-party penetration test by a specific vendor does not mean your network is secure. Just because you have gotten an ATO doesn't mean it's secure. Just because nobody today can get inside from the outside doesn't mean you're secure. There are a whole host of number of risks out there that can pop up in a day's notice or an hour or a minute's notice. So just stay vigilant.
Absolutely. And Donald, I'd love to hear from you. Also, we have a question from Tony Stirk about how do you know you aren't already compromised? Because statistics say most people don't know for a while. So if you want to share your thoughts there too, love to hear from you next.
Yeah, I think you can't know, right? You can't really prove that you're definitely not compromised. So I think what the other folks have been saying is spot on, is that you just have to assume that there's something in there. So you have to think about how do you architect your networks and your systems and your data and your operations in such a way that if there's someone on your network, you're still protecting the most important data with the right kind of multiple levels of security and protection, and that you can that where your most important data is, and that you can track when someone's accessing or manipulating that, and that you have appropriate and effective kind of backups and alternative sources where you're keeping that in case you do detect malicious access and activity around your most important access points. I also say, we're talking a lot about data and
Uh-oh, I think we lost him again. No. We'll give him another second here. Donald, we may need you to log back out, log back in. All right. Well, anyone else on the panel? We almost got him. Hold on, we'll give him another second.
Yeah, my CIO will be hearing from me today. but yeah, there's a lot of, I would just say, in addition to your data, the same kind of concerns you have are your physical systems, your cyber physical systems, your industrial control systems. We're looking at that from a homeland security perspective of what are the same principles that we use to protect data that we use to protect access to some of those critical systems that are enabling critical functions for the nation as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other thoughts there? Okay, we're going to pop up poll question number 3 then for our audience. It'll be up here momentarily. What do you think is the biggest security challenge for government agencies? Please take a moment to respond to that. And then my next question, William, if you could start us off here. I don't think we've heard from you first yet. How does data security play a role in your agency's hiring process? Does it play a role? What are some of your thoughts around that?
So we don't have a traditional hiring system. We do have a review of applicants coming in. The civilian sector is a little different, where they can take people, get people through university partnerships and those types of things. But as far as the data security impacting hiring, we are always looking for those skill sets, and I think anything that moves us closer to securing high value data will be looked upon favorably in that process.
Okay, thank you. How about our other panelists? Do you look at that in the hiring process, Damien?
Yeah, I think if when you're looking at a potential candidate, you obviously don't want to hire an IT security professional, analyst, engineer that's had a history of data security issues, number one. So I'll throw that out there. But then secondly, I like to ask questions. So during the interview process, or even when I'm reviewing your resumes, I'm looking for knowledge about tenets of data security, right? We all talk about the CIA triad, but I'd like to get a little bit more specific and ask some scenario-based questions. So what if you discover this, or what if you noticed an employee downloading sensitive data on a personal, external media and throwing it in their bag? Or what if you noticed you got an alert about 20 megabytes of encrypted email attachments being sent out in the middle of the night? So there are indicators of data theft or data security issues that you can build from an automated perspective. But then also, you want to question, especially from a security analyst engineer perspective, you want to ensure you have a few questions in that interview process to screen them candidates.
Thank you. Any other panelists want to add to that? Okay, moving right along then. Donald, we'll have you start us off with this last question here. Where does data security lie in your agency's prioritization?
Extremely high, right? So, I mean, as working closely with the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency as the nation's cyber defense kind of lead agent, and being responsible for so much data across the Homeland Security enterprise, it's a critical. I think it's probably top one or two. And you look at our security strategy. When you look at our research agenda, also number one, data-centric security as the focal point of our long-term research strategy, because it underpins everything else, especially as we continue to enhance and expand our leverage of artificial intelligence. And as we prepare ourselves to continue to try to mitigate automated attacks based on machine learning techniques, it's going to be focused on our data and our systems and our training models and capabilities. It's at the top of our list of things that we need to be thinking about and trying to solve not only today's problems, but those problems that are coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, thank you. How about the rest of the folks online? Is that similar? Is that the same for your agency?
Yeah, I'd say so. I have experiences in the private sector and now in the federal sector. I will. So, quick story. I was brought on as a CISO in the private sector about a month and a half or so into the job. Noticed some weird stuff going on the network. Brought in a third party to kind of validate my findings, and we had a breach, and they had been in the network for over a year. I will say in the private sector where profit is the goal, then for me specifically, because it wasn't a technology company, the priority on security shot up really quick, and I got a lot of money and I got a lot of resources. When I secured the organization and it was quiet for a while, guess what happened to priority? It sank all the way back down. Couldn't hire any more people that left for greener pastures. Couldn't bring on new technology to deal with evolving threats. So then fast forward in the government space, we're very risk adverse and very compliance heavy. So I would say in most federal cases, security is a top priority, but that's still, if you dive a little bit deeper, take a look at developers. Their concern is making things work and providing a service for clients, right? They're not necessarily focused on security, and that often gets, piled on after the fact. But I am seeing a shift in the federal space where we're getting pulled in the early stages to get thoughts, to get approvals, to do evaluations before you get to the final product, and then kind of tacking on at the end.
Thank you, Damien. Anybody else on our panel?
Yeah, I'll add to that. So something Damien said there, which is folks that weren't traditionally thinking about cybersecurity as part of their role. It's what I'm seeing across multiple agencies now, which is we're going and talking to maybe administrators on an infrastructure side or developers or application folks that normally didn't have that in their mindset. It's getting to be a need now where security has to be a conversation that everybody's at least familiar with having.
Absolutely. Thank you. William or Donald, any further comments?
Yeah, on that comment, hey, look, it's something everyone should have. It most definitely is. Part of the issue is trying to balance the proper level of preparedness. You don't want to overburden people who don't really, cyber doesn't really affect their everyday lives, but you need to still make them realize that, yeah, cyber could affect your everyday life in a very, very upfront and in your face manner.
Absolutely. Thank you. So with that, we are almost out of time, so we don't have much more time for questions, but I'll ask that our events team do collect the ones we didn't get a chance to cover. And if any of our panelists want to respond by email, we can handle it that way. Outside of that, I want to take some time to go around with all of our panelists and just talk about what the most important takeaway from this discussion is, whether it really resonated with you or you want to make sure that our audience fully understands from this time here on this webinar, which flew by, of course. So let's start with Damien, please. What is your main takeaway from this conversation that you'd like everybody to walk away with a better understanding of?
Yeah, I think one of the things that cybersecurity professional folks can do to keep their knowledge relevant and current, right? I say that because there was a question, I think in one of the comments here, about how to stay up with evolving threats. One of the things that you got to do regularly, whether it's every day or a couple times a week, is there are a number of sources available, whether it's darkreading.com, Krebs on security. There are a number of news outlets that report on issues. Security Boulevard is one. So I would argue that to go out there, create you a short, and you don't have to read everything on the internet, right? But create a short list where you can go get an elevator speech or go get a 5-minute sound bite, unless you need to get additional details, just to see what's going on out there, right? And keep up with that, because you may either get questioned. You may be working at a place where the data that you have, the systems that you have are attractive to adversaries. There may be some of you folks working where you can probably assume that your data is not as valuable as a Space Force data trove, right? They have some important stuff that they're dealing with. If I'm working for 7-Eleven, outside of PII or some contract information, my data is not as valuable for attackers. So the chances of them getting after my data, unless it's easy to do, is a lot lower. So stay knowledgeable on evolving threats, read, and communicate to your leadership regularly on what you need to better do your job, and what risks are out there that you don't have covered by either a process, people, or technologies that's in your environment today.
Well said. Thank you so much. And Donald, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'd like to build on that. As you're going through your daily duties and facing challenges, I would say take those notes, talk to your leadership, as Damien mentioned, but also if you have some researchers, you have scientists, you have a CTO office or someone who has the job to kind of look further out. If you have hard challenges you really can't solve, pass those challenges on to some of those teams, because they can take a longer look to see if there's some fundamental breakthrough coming up around the corner, or that they can work on to help you solve those problems. And that only helps the R&D community provide more value back to the operational teams as well. Thank you.
Thank you. William, let's hear from you next, please.
Yeah, I'm really big on personal and professional development. So if you're interested in cyber, you need to start learning now-ish. And any resource is better than no resource. The speaker mentioned some some very good websites and podcasts. Those are easy kills. Podcasts can be done while you're running or lifting weights or riding the metro, whatever the case may be. But I would caution the audience to never, ever be the smartest person in the room. And if you're not learning, you're not progressing. Because at some point, your safety net's going to be taken away, and you'll be looking for the lead, but then all of a sudden it's you in the room, right? So you need to be prepared to be that guy or girl and lead upwards, develop your people, provide your people a circle of security where they can feel good and be able to get out in front of things. They'll really develop themselves, because at a certain point you're only going to go as far as your team does. So hopefully you hire some really smart people.
Yes, yes. Awesome. All right, Aaron, we will end it with you.
Yeah, thank you. I love the comment around hire some smart people. I always try to hire smarter people than me anytime I can, and that's fairly easy to do. But the other thing, I think Donald made a really good point about engaging with other organizations, and I'll make the maybe shameless plug as the vendor on the call of saying, make sure that you're leveraging your vendors, your resellers, your partners in a two-way conversation, because one of the things that we're constantly looking for is feedback from our customers and how we can make our products better, what you're seeing out there that maybe we're not seeing. And in addition, we may have the ability, like, as I've mentioned a couple of times on this call, I deal with hundreds of public sector agencies across the country. So there's many times that I may see some kind of a situation or something that's working for them, or somebody on my team may see something that, because of just the scope of that visibility that lets me see. So I'd really encourage everybody to really make that continual learning a sort of a two-way street.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to ask all of our panelists that are on camera to please smile, because we're going to take a screenshot real quick. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, William. We're just going to have to Photoshop you in. But on that note, I want to thank you all, our panelists, so much for your time today, as well as the folks back home. And I loved the engagement during this webinar. We had some really awesome questions that sparked fantastic conversation. So love that energy. Thank you again to our partners at Rubrik. And if you enjoyed this webinar, you will probably enjoy our next one. So go register on our website. They're free, of course. And then if you'd like to receive your CPE credit for this event, just answer yes or no, and we'll be sure to get it over to you. But I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and a fantastic week, and we will see you at the next one. Thank you. Bye.